record. Here we go. All right. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for joining us tonight to go over all the things that we need to do to get ready for the start of the school year. So share some of that with us, Susan. Give us a tip.
Hard to believe. I'm with you. And so I am Susan Thomas, and I serve as a consultant for Family Connections. I am a retired educator and served as a teacher and as a special ed director for several school districts. And now I do some private consulting. And also, I was mom and now I'm grandmother. And so it's interesting. I have all my, uh, several grandchildren who are in elementary school and one who will be starting school this year in kindergarten. And it's been interesting watching my daughter go through some of these things. It's nice to kind of think about as we get ready. It kind of made me think about some things maybe I hadn't. So this is going to be quick, Melissa, because we have a short amount of time, but I know that you're planning to share these slides because there's some helpful links on these slides. And then we have some additional resources with everybody on today. So that they can actually access some of these resources. So I say this is kind of like a public service announcement for getting ready for school. So we're going to talk about really, having a good start to the year doesn't just happen. We can't expect success. We really do have to plan for it. And sometimes for some of our children, this is a hard time of transition. And so we want to make sure that we've done everything possible to get them ready. So I always talk about preparation. When we're getting ready for school, we've got these requirements that we have to meet, and schools have all kind of different requirements. We want to make sure we're building healthy relationships between home and school. And then we want to think about our routines and what we want to go ahead and start doing with routines. And then we have a happy family, happy student, and happy school if we kind of think through these things. So we're going to quickly go through some of the requirements. I want to start first of all with school visits and thinking about those school visits. If you have not been to your child's school and you feel like your child is a child who doesn't do well going into new places, has a hard time transitioning, you may want to make an appointment to go visit the school. I will tell you that during the summer, that it's a busy time for schools, but they are not fully staffed. So we always want to make sure we make an appointment. I will tell you most of our schools are closed on Fridays. They work 4-day weeks, but I do know if you want to make a visit so that you can go see the building, you can walk the hallways, all of those things, you need to call the school and see if you can arrange that. We're going to kind of talk about those basic needs that need to be met and making sure that you have the parent-student handbook. And we want this to be a mutual sharing of information, not just that you have the handbook from the school, but that you're sharing about your child back. And then making sure that you have all the forms. And it's nice now because so many of them are electronic, but there's a lot of paperwork to get your child in school. I did not know this till just recently, but in Charleston County, you actually have to get a notary to verify your residence, and that's required for students every year. So there's all kinds of rules, and you're going to want to make sure you know those things. The parent-student handbooks are generally online, but you can also call the school and ask them to send you one electronically, or you can pick one up when you're at the school. Make sure you read it carefully. Look at all the requirements. That's a really important piece. It familiarizes you with all the things in the school and what happens. You may look online right now and the handbook is not, they haven't loaded the new handbook because they're always waiting for the very last minute thing. Schools, trying to make sure they've got all the staff or any changes the district has made. I know there are a lot of board meetings going on this week in school districts with these last minute policy changes that affect your student handbook. But even if last year's is on there, it will familiarize you a lot with what you need to know. Enrollment's really important. So if you've not already enrolled your child, you want to make sure that you have enrolled them. We can't just show up. So that's something you're going to want to do, and call and ask about enrolling, and ask what the requirements are. Districts have all kinds of different requirements for enrollment. And so you'll need to find out. I know in one district I was in, you had to have 2 pieces of mail addressed to you. I don't know if that's that way where you were, Melissa. And so, and then if you're going in a new school, maybe you're transitioning, you've just moved or something, you're going to want to make sure that records have been transferred. And I just always say, don't assume that that just happens. You want to make sure you follow up, because we want to make sure that all those things are there for schools. And we'll talk a little bit more about that with IEPs. And then, of course, making sure you know the health requirements. What are the vaccine requirements? What kind of health records do they want, need? All of those things that you can provide, so that the school knows as much about your child as possible. And then, of course, you may need to update things if your child's returning. Make sure that you've checked on anything you may need to do with that. Now, before you buy anything, make sure you check to see if there's a supply list. There are all kinds of things in schools now. Sometimes they actually buy the supplies for the students. Sometimes they sell the supplies at school and you can just buy a bundle. My daughter was telling me that's true at her school, that's an option for parents. And she said, I love school supplies. I'm not going to do that. Well, that's fine. She has a supply list to go and buy things. That would be me too. I love school supplies. We just want to make sure that we're not getting those things. I love this little pen, and my granddaughter would love this, but you know what? I'm pretty sure there are things like that they don't want you to buy. Think about the things that are very distracting. And so those are things we want to make sure that we kind of don't get in our school supplies, that we get those things that are useful, that are really functional for kids. And then make sure you've looked at the dress code. Even elementary schools have dress codes. And so some have uniforms, some have, that you have to wear, khaki pants or shorts. And, so any of those kinds of things, you want to make sure that you've checked them before you start buying things. Another big thing is about attendance. So if it's your first time your child is in school, attendance, there are a lot of rules about attendance. And students by law cannot have more than 10 unexcused absences by our state law. And one of the issues that we have a lot is we have students that miss more days, and actually their children become truant. And actually that is a court hearing that concerns the parent. So, 10 days seems like a lot, but it can go really quickly. So you want to be careful and make sure you've gotten the calendar and looked at when the school holidays are. And try to arrange things on those school holidays, or some of our school districts do early release days. So the students get out at, noon or before 11 o'clock. So teachers can have professional learning time. And so if that's one of those days, that's when you might want to set your doctor's appointments or things that you want to do, so that you're not pulling your child out of school anymore than you have to. Now, we don't want children going to school sick either, by the way. And so those can generally be excused. These are unexcused absences. You want to make sure you're very familiar with the arrival and dismissal rules. What's supposed to happen in that building, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But what time do students, are they supposed to be there, and what time are they dismissed? I will tell you that that some it's interesting to me because if you're late picking up your child, there's an adult that has there are adults that have to stay there, and it might be their time to go work on things, but they have to stay and supervise students. And so we want to make sure we're timely. We want to make sure students are not tardy. It's really hard for teachers when they have students strolling in the morning to get things going and get that behavioral momentum going for learning. And so make sure you pay attention to those things. And that's a tardy policy there. And then a lot of times your district has additional attendance policies. Once again, those things should be on the website. Tardies are a big issue in our elementary and middle and high schools too. I work with schools all the time and I hear this. So we need to be on time. It's a life skill. And so we want our children to learn that. And for our elementary students, if you're getting them to school and they're late, that's not the child's issue. And so we want to make sure that we're on time. If your child's going to ride the bus, you want to make sure, number one, that you let the school know that you're going to need bus transportation. You're going to want to check and make sure that you know where the bus routes are. Most districts will contact you with all of that. If you have young children, I would recommend that you be at the stop with them. I know I see sometimes, and I have a friend that the parents in their neighborhood take turns going to the bus stop, and her child's in middle school, but she said, we don't think it's good to leave them there unsupervised. So they've kind of got a little schedule. So we want to make sure that you're there with them, and you want to make sure that you're teaching them to take 3 steps back when they see the bus come driving up, that they step back, that they wait for the bus to come to a complete stop. And when they have to cross the street, take steps across and watch the driver. And then the big rule on the bus is to keep hands, feet, and things to yourself. Most students get in trouble on the bus because somebody hit somebody, somebody bumped into somebody, somebody was playing with somebody. And so we want to make sure our buses are safe. Shout out to our bus drivers. They transport 60 students. They turn their back to them and drive and try to get them safely to school, which I always say I would not do. As a teacher, I was always trained to keep my eyes on my students. So I always give a big shout out to our bus drivers and remember to thank them for what they're doing. If you've
Susan,
got
one
yes.
thing that I would mention with the bus, many school districts have where you can sign up for an app or for a notification on where the buses are if buses are running late. And so if that, like I know that is an option in Greenville County. And so if your school district offers that, make sure to sign up for that in advance. That way you know, and you're not out there wondering, have we missed the bus? What's going on?
Great thought, Melissa. Thank you for adding that. I forgot about that. That is so true. If you have children that are walking or riding their bikes, and we do have children that still ride their bikes to school, and you want to make sure that you've practiced the route. We recommend a peer buddy. When we think about safety, we want our students to be in helmets, and then making sure your child knows about crossing the street. And then make sure that you have let your child know where there are safe places along the way, just in case. You just never know when somebody's going to drive up, and you want them to know where there's some places that they can go. And make sure that you've taught them all about stranger danger and, familiar faces, and, don't get in the car with anybody and those kinds of things. There's some nice little hints on this Safe Kids Walking and Safety. And so you might want to take a look at that. Now, the car rider, if your child's a car rider, and I will just tell you, my duty for 8 years as a teacher was directing traffic in the car rider line. And I sometimes felt like I was putting my life on the line every day when I was directing traffic. So parents, make sure you know the rules for drop off and pick up. So generally schools will have that for you. Here's what you're supposed to do. You've got to have the child's name, or some people do it different ways, but what are the expectations? But always making sure you're being careful. The fact that you might be running a little late for work, you still have to wait and make sure your child gets out in a safe place. And you want to make sure that you allow time. Car rider lines tend to be long. I know last year I was helping get my grandsons to school, and I did the car rider line. I was glad to be in the car and not directing traffic. But I was very thoughtful about what they were doing in their rules. Always remember, quick goodbye. That's not the time to have a discussion. Do not enter into those kinds of things in the car rider line. We want a quick goodbye and remind them to go to their designated place. You know, there's a lot of things that happen in the mornings in the car. I know when you travel with children, sometimes those cannot be pleasant events. We want to try to make sure that we put them out the door with a plan for the day for success, and not carrying over something that happened in the car. And so that's really important. So just a quick goodbye. We don't want to prolong it, and get them off. Just thinking about health, making sure that you know about your school nurse. Most of our elementary schools should have school nurses. I do know that's been really hard lately to staff our schools, but most of them do. They either have a nurse or they share a nurse. Make sure that you are sharing information that the school needs to know about your child. And also make sure that you have information about the vaccines. I do have those as a handout. They are on our Department of Health Environmental Control. There's a whole web page dedicated to that. Make sure that you're ready with that. There are exemptions that you can get, but you need to know about those. Please don't go to the school and say, you know, I don't want to, I'm not getting a vaccine, because the school has rules and they can't admit your child without the proper paperwork. And the school can't make that decision. And so make sure that you've taken care of that before time. If you have medicine that your child is supposed to take at school, you need to get the rules for them to be able to take that medicine. Children are not allowed to have drugs on their person. They have to be kept in a locked cabinet in the nurse's station. They want doctor's orders for those drugs. You just want to make sure you check with for the rules that they have for administering drugs. And you have to take them to school and deliver them. You cannot put them in your child's book bag. You've got to take them and hand them over. You can just imagine how scary it would be if drugs got into the wrong hands in a school building. So make sure you get those things, and that will be fine. If this is your first experience with school and your child's taking medicine for, you know, whatever, ADHD, allergies, whatever that the doctor has prescribed, the school can administer that medicine. And if your child's sick, make sure you follow the rules about fever. You know, how many 24 hours before you return to school, fever free. You know, particularly the last thing we want is for a good old stomach bug to start going around a first grade classroom. Nothing worse. And so make sure that you are reading those things about illness. And these are just a few reminders about medication. I think I've already talked about most of these. Make sure that just one that I didn't talk about is you do have to have original bottles with labels. So you can't put them in a little, you know, travel container or any of those things. But your school nurse can help you with all of those rules. Just make sure you talk to them. And then for students who do have chronic health issues, there can be a health plan developed. And so if you are, and I will say, even for students with IEPs, if they're chronic health issues, we also need to develop a health plan because that involves additional players, including our nursing personnel. And so you do have to have a doctor's order, and the nurse actually helps develop those plans. So make sure if you have a child who has chronic illnesses that you take care of that and talk to the school about it so that everyone's informed of what they need to do to support your child in the building. A little bit about food. You need to let the school know if you have allergy, if your child has any food allergies. But also you need to find out from the school if there are things that you cannot bring into the school. So I know my grandson, they can't have anything with peanut butter because they have a child with a serious peanut allergy to peanuts. And so, you know, no peanut butter sandwiches and lunches, no. So you need to make sure you find out about all of those things before school starts. But also they'll send something home generally. That goes for bringing snacks. It's very interesting. My favorite candy is Reese's peanut butter cups. Don't know about any of the rest of you. I've had one or two in my lifetime. I was doing something with a group of teachers and took candy to share while they was doing some training, and found out that a teacher had a peanut allergy, could not be away from them. So I quickly took them out of the room, you know, got them out of the building. I didn't even think about it. And so I'm far more, I think about that a lot more, but do find out. Make sure you know what the school food and beverage policy is. So a lot of schools now, students can have water bottles, but they can't have anything else. And so, or they can bring one snack, or it's just you want to make sure you check on those things. Remember that schools do serve generally breakfast and lunch. All of them will serve lunch. And if you are in need, make sure that you fill out the free and reduced lunch form. It's that there is a, you know, I hope one day we'll just give lunch to children and don't make parents go through all this paperwork. But right now that is still a process to fill out, and do fill that out because you'd be surprised that, you know, the reduced lunch is something that a lot of our families qualify for. And so making sure that you do that paperwork. And then let's just talk about communication. You're going to want to make sure you understand the rules about what your child can and can't have at school. What kinds of devices are they going to get a device, and what are the rules for that? If they bring them home, what are you supposed to do at home? I love it. In my in my son's house, there's a big old note on the door that says, charge your computer when he walks in the back door, because that's one of their rules, that they bring their computers home and they charge them at home. And so he's a little, almost 11-year-old boy, and he seems to forget that sometimes. So we have notes to remind him. Make sure that you keep your contact info up to date. When I talk with schools, that is one of their biggest frustrations, is that they have an old email, they have an old phone number, and those things change. We know they can change, but make sure that you've kept that information up to date, and that the school has that. We're building a school and home connection. And it's important for you to figure out exactly what that's going to look like and how to communicate with the school and to work with the school on that. So as we think about that, I want to talk a little bit about academic needs. If you're starting a new school and your child already has an IEP, or they have a 504 plan, we want to make sure that everybody in the building knows about it on the first day of school. And I cannot talk about this enough, particularly if you are moving. You may have told your old school to send the records, but the new school didn't get them. And so then people do not know. So make sure the school knows your child has that, and that if you have a copy of it, take it to the school. The school still has to get official records. They have to request those. But if we have a current IEP or a current 504 plan, schools can work off of those plans. And it's really important because by law, services have to be implemented on the first day of school. And we want to make sure we have that. Make sure that you understand how information is shared. How is the school going to let you know things? Melissa, it's just like you said, the apps. A lot of schools have apps now that send out information. Some schools use text. Some schools will say, how do you want us to communicate with you? But you need to make sure that you understand that information sharing and how it works. And then also making sure that you know how to communicate with the people in the building. That's really important. How do teachers want to be communicated with, and you know, what are their different times, as you know, to talk. Like you can't just call anytime. And I worry about teachers sometimes because they're answering emails at night or answering text at night. And I'm a big believer teachers need to set boundaries so that they can do their jobs. So when they go home, they need time to rest, be with their families. So try to get an idea of how the school works, how your teacher wants to communicate. Some teachers may say, hey, please text me, you know, but only up until this time if you have questions. It's really important that we're building those relationships and in schools. And I just want to give you a few reminders. You can tell this is something I get more passionate about. Melissa, I don't know if we've talked about this, but my son's an assistant principal, and he spends more time squashing rumors that have circulated out in social media land than you know, he cares to talk about. So let's help out as parents who are partners with our school. First of all, let's make sure we're thinking positive and that we are positive about where our children are. If I can't imagine trashing the place where my child's spending a lot of their school day. That doesn't mean everything's perfect, but if we have things to say, let's say them to the right people. Let's make sure that we're thinking positive, that we're promoting that with our students. And I just, this reminder, if you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all. It's
Well,
really
Susan,
important.
I was just going to add, I know at my house, if I hear one of my children start to say, "Well, my mom says," I mean, I don't want to sit there and think, "Ugh, what are they about to say?" You know, so just knowing that anything that I say at home may go and be repeated at school. And it may be something that I don't necessarily want repeated at school, or that I want to have the conversation with the teacher in a way that's going to be productive, not where my child has repeated something that may or may not be in the correct context. So
Absolutely.
knowing
And
that there's
also children don't need to know, you know, and you're going to have things you want to discuss with your child's teacher, or things that you don't like. I mean, you know, or that you're concerned about. They don't need to be shared with the child necessarily. Let's keep those conversations between adults, and let our children be children. Also, um, school, we need to view school as exciting. Yeah, not always fun, everything you do, but you know, going to your job every day isn't either. But let's make sure that we build that anticipation, and that we talk about, so students can become very anxious about school, but that we present those things that are so positive. And that's why you want to make that school visit and maybe talk to some other parents so that we can be excited about things that are coming up. If you display a negativity or an anxiety, I can assure you it's going to come across with your child a lot of the times. And that's just the reminder about anxiety and making sure that we are easing children. We're there to help them and that they have a good experience at school. I used to always watch our little 3 and 4 year olds come to school and think how excited they were, and then watch them again in high school dragging in. And I always think, what happened? You know? And so we want to keep building that momentum that school is a good place. Remember, if your child is having a lot of difficulty for whatever reason, maybe they have a high anxiety level, remember there are counselors in the building, there are school psychologists that can help. And so all you need to do is contact the school or contact your child's teacher. A lot of times, a lot of counselors will have just a direct, they'll have a referral on their website that you can just call or refer. But make sure that you talk to support people in the building because there are services available. Making sure it's important that you let the school know about you. And so sometimes you'll get enrollment forms that ask this, but sometimes you don't. And so you can always just put some things together, but making sure that the school knows who's in your family. We have lots of different kinds of families, and we want our teachers to be sensitive to those things. I was raised by my aunt, and because I lost my parents in elementary school. And so, you know, for the teacher to say, tell your mom and dad, well, you know, that was hard for me. So if teachers know those kinds of things, or if grandparents are in the family, or maybe you've got a friend living in the home, because kids start talking, and if we don't know those things, sometimes they say things that might worry us, you know, and so we want to make sure that you've let them know. Let them know what your work schedule is. When are good times to contact you? So some of you may be in jobs where you can't just answer the phone every time, you know, that somebody calls. And so let them know, you know, when are good times for them to get in touch with you. If it's an emergency, make sure that they know who they can talk to as well. And make sure that you communicate about your child's needs and those things in your family that are meaningful. That's how we build those positive relationships. And this is the ones in a case of emergency. Nothing worse than a child falling on the playground, breaking their arm, and we can't get in touch with the parent. And so if there's another emergency contact, make sure you keep those up to date and that the school always is aware. And a lot of times schools do get this information at the beginning of the year, but I'm just telling you, something changes, you need to contact the school and let them know those things. And make sure that you have something that you might could hand the teacher about your child. And I always say it's important you might interview them about things they like. I know y'all have an all about you, Melissa. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, we have an all about you that we Family Connection share with parents that may include information about you know, these are things that I really like. These are things that I really do not like. These are things that when I, you know, when I feel sad, this is what helps me. When I feel stressed, this is what helps me. You know, some kids, they may like a hug, or they may like talking it out if they're feeling stressed. Other kid, you know, my own child, he doesn't want to be hugged, and he doesn't want to talk. You know, if you over talk him, which is hard for me because I am a talker, but if you talk too much, that actually escalates him and makes him more stressed. And so being able to share little things like that with the teacher, you know, my child used to be highly motivated by Skittles. You know, Susan highly motivated by Reese's Cups, my child highly motivated by Skittles. So you give him a Skittle and he's your best friend. And so just being able to share little things like that was really helpful with, if you just talk to my kid about video games, boy, he could be escalated up to here. You talk to him about video games, and he is going to be calm and relaxed. And that's the way to get him back on track. So being able to share things like that, which might seem kind of trivial or silly to us as parents, it's really helpful to the teacher.
Absolutely. And most teachers really want that information because
Mhm.
it does help. And I agree. If I know that there's it's something that they'll talk about, if I sense that they're not having a good day, I can actually, it's a great relationship builder too, you know? And so, and that's one of the things we're trying to do with educators, making sure that you're clear about things your child can do and the things they can do well and enjoy doing. Um, and also letting the teacher know things that they need help with. So I think a lot of times about kindergartners in my career and undoing pants. So they hadn't quite mastered the zipper and those buttons, if they're not yet firm on that, then let's make sure you let the school know so that the teacher can kind of make sure that child is okay, because there's nothing worse for a child than an accident at school. If your child's not potty trained yet, you need to let them know. If you've any kind of thing your child's going to need help with academically or with their any behavioral things, it's important if you know that, so that we can work on a plan together. And then if and I love this, Melissa, because you said if there are things that will help, because a lot of times when kids anxiety or their behavior is escalating, if we can start a conversation with a preferred thing, that will de-escalate the behavior. So you can talk to your child about things they feel help them, and you can share that with the school. And then also really talking about who are the trusted adults and building that in there. Are there people that are influential with that child? And making sure that we know that and that we share that information. And you need to get that information back from your child if there's somebody at school that they like and talk about, because sometimes that's the connection for that child. That may not be the teacher. It might be somebody else that they've connected with. And then making sure that we're preparing kids and that you're in the know for what's going to happen during the week. Making sure that a lot of elementary schools, they got a folder. The folder goes home on Tuesday. My folders went home on Monday. And so, parents knew that on Mondays, a folder went home. And they knew to look for things in that folder. So make sure you find out what that is. Make sure you find out, this is back again to communicating. Make sure that you have found out times the teacher is available to talk. Please don't go to the school first thing in the morning and try to talk to a teacher. That's a really hard time. They're trying to get kids in the classroom. They're trying to get learning started. And so make sure that we're respectful of that so that they can do what they're supposed to be doing, which is teaching that whole group of, what used to be 20 is probably more like 30 now because of all our shortages with our teachers. Making sure you know all the things about social media. During the year, check those book bags. Check them before your child goes to school and check them when they come home. So children can put all kinds of interesting things in book bags. I have discipline stories to tell over the years of students putting adult beverages in book bags, elementary age students. Putting the knife out of the drawer because they were going to use it to cut their apple. And all of those things, we we have to be so careful about now. Bringing, money to school. I mean, we've had students who took all the money out of their piggy bank because some student told them to do something. and we've gotten, a good pile of money. And so make sure that you check the book bag in the morning before they go to school, and that you check it when they come home, to make sure what's in there. Make sure you know about parent meetings and that you attend parent meetings. And that if you can't attend something, just drop a note to your teacher and let them know why. Families are busy, we have all kinds of things, but teachers, if you think about it from a school perspective, if they never see you, they start to think that you don't want to be involved and have a relationship with the school. And so if it's hard for you to be there, talk to the school about that, because I know some people have jobs that don't allow that. And so, but you need to make sure that the school understands that. And
Well, and Susan, I would add to that that, if you let the school know, "Hey, I'm not able to come. My child has baseball practice. I'm not able to come. I work third shift or second shift," whatever it is. A lot of times the teacher can help figure out a different time whenever you can meet. Because I can see where if the teacher never hears back from the parent, then the teacher might get an impression of the parent that is not um, accurate in many cases.
correct.
That it is, I'm working two jobs. I don't have time. And honestly, by the time I remembered to text you, it was 11:30 at night,
Right.
and I didn't want to do that.
And that's
So
a great point, Melissa, because a lot of times, remember, as I tell people, I was a teacher my whole life, and I lived in the education world. I
mhm,
know about other worlds, and so particularly when I first started teaching, but my children's father was a highway patrolman, and he worked all kind of crazy hours. So going to things might have been difficult for him. And so we understand that, but it's good to communicate that. Do make sure that if you are sent an email or a text or something that you're supposed to respond to, that you respond to it. If you're asked to do something, respond, please. Take a few minutes. It's important. Here's the big thing. Make sure you're communicating with your child every day and talking to them. You know, uh, I was asking, my granddaughter this afternoon on FaceTime, did you have a good day at school? And she said yes, which she's still in daycare, but she calls it school. And she said yes. And I thought, well, that doesn't tell me anything. But so ask questions that are open-ended so that they can give you information. What was your favorite part of the day? What was hard for you today? What's something you learned about today? And a lot of times teachers will send in their folders what you're working on next week, so you can prompt them with that, hey, weren't y'all going to talk about dinosaurs this week? What did you learn? And then ask them always who they talked or played with. One of the things we want to be really careful about is that our children are building healthy relationships with each other. And so if you hear something that's concerning at home about, your child not having friends, or that maybe there's a peer that's saying not nice things, be sure you just let the school know. Now, sometimes students can view things differently, but schools need to know, and they want to know if there are problems or you're seeing problems. Here's a good little resources for you about communicating with your child. If you click on these, it'll take you to a website that gives you just some, I love this one, the 25 questions. It's a good one. If you notice your child is starting to feel like they are maybe being bullied, or that they're not happy, they say they don't have any friends, they don't know anybody, then you may want to seek some help. And certainly we can do that, and you can communicate that to the teacher, and once again, the school counselor can be there. And anytime you have concerns about bullying, report it to the principal in writing. And so put that concern in an email to the principal of the school so that they know there are concerns if there's anything that you think is unsafe. Now, that doesn't mean what your child has come home and said, because kids' perceptions of things are always different. But the principal does need to investigate that. Make sure that you notify the school. Just go ahead and be thinking about this, about any changes there are in your child's physical health, any or yours. You know, my daughter currently is has cancer, and she has young children, and her school needs to know. My granddaughter's school needs to know that that is going on in their family. And so make sure. My daughter's a private person, and she said, I don't need to tell them that. I said, yes, you do. Her mama told her that she did need to let them know, because that's something going on in their family. If you've had changes in your home environment, somebody's moved out, maybe you're going through a divorce, maybe a grandmother, you know, any of those things. Maybe grandmama was living there, now they're not. Any of those things, it never hurts just to tell the school, hey, we've had some changes. If your work schedule changes, any of those kinds of things. It doesn't take but a minute. Boy, electronic media is so nice. We can just send a quick note, and it does help. And finally, I am very concerned that we are losing our teachers. And one of the things, unfortunately, that we hear teachers say, it's not the children. It's the demands from adults. And so make sure that you are thanking your child's teacher for what they do. If you have some concerns about your child's teacher, take those up appropriately. Make sure you give them the shout out on social media. Your child's teacher did something great, take the couple of extra minutes to put something nice, because our teachers work hard, and we need to make sure that we're appreciating them so that we can attract people to the profession, so that we have teachers for years to come. And when things go wrong, you need to take it to the right people. You may be something you want to take up with the teacher or school administrator, but make sure that you express it to them and not to everybody else. If there's ever anything unsafe, make sure you notify the school principal immediately. Anything that you see or feel like is unsafe. Now, very quickly, a couple of things to do right now. It's the end of June and school will be starting. So don't wait. We want to get those routines in place and schedules at home ready so that they will easily transition. Making sure that you have routines for all of those things. I was talking to a parent this morning, and she was sharing that the morning time was very hard getting her child off to school. Her child is a child with autism. And so having those practice routines and those visual schedules for students is very, very important. Write routines with your child. Say, hey, what do you think we need to do and get up in the morning? What will, what's it going to look like when we leave the house? What do meal times look like? So what are the things the child needs to do? And there's a ton of resources out there for you about writing routines. I think we've shared some before. So making sure that you've thought through everything they have to do. They have to get out of the bed. They have to, you know, brush their teeth. They have to put their clothes on. What's the order they're going to do? Whatever it is, write it. And these are the ones we think of most: waking up, mealtime, getting their book bag ready. How do they get out of the door to school? I know my children rode with me when they were little, and this was back in the day when you could put one of them in the front seat. That's not a problem now. So they had odd and even days. That was a routine. And so just even little things like that. Think about all of those things. I always say, anytime you're having trouble, behavioral trouble, you need to write a routine. So if bath time is a problem, get a routine. and it needs to be the same thing every day. At bedtime, get a routine. And then this is just an example of a bedtime routine. Wash, pajamas, brush teeth, water, potty, stories, kisses, lights out.
Well, and Susan, I think, and you've included it in this example of the bedtime routine, but ending a routine with something positive,
Right.
so that I might not want to take my bath. I might not want to brush my teeth or those things, but I do want the story and I do want the kisses and the snuggles. So, okay, I will do those things so that I can get down to these, the steps that I want. So
Uh,
just ending with something positive.
I love that. And that's a great thing
Mhm.
of making sure that you thought through that too. Here's one, the morning routines, and you can add other things on there. You might have a way that you're reinforcing them for those things. You can have a chore chart, something like this. There's all kinds. I found this, I like it. I was sharing it with my son. It's an app that you can actually deposit money, because my grandson, who's almost 11, is starting to get into, so if he does things, then a certain amount will be deposited, and it can be used for, you don't have to use it as real money. You could say, okay, it's going to cost you $20 to be able to watch your favorite show or have some additional TV time. So you don't have to give them real money, but it's a way that they're starting to kind of see that reinforcement system set up. So that's a cool one. It's got some other great things on there for chores and stuff as well. And then here's some resources on routines. And then finally, just making sure that you have a daily schedule for your children to know what's happening. It can be a weekly planner. You can do it like this. There's a link to some ideas. You may have a visual schedule, particularly if your child is a child with autism or children with anxiety. Also, visuals are very, very helpful. I don't care how old they are, but particularly for our young children. And I just happened to make a picture of this is my son's. They have this blackboard over, it sits over their dining table in their kitchen. And on it, they have the dinner menu, their lunch menu. This was obviously during the summer, and then any kind of events that they might have. And so, or this is the lunch that they take to school, that they
Oh my
have
gosh.
at school.
Can your son and daughter-in-law please come organize my life? Nice kids, they have that all worked out. Oh my gosh, I'm jealous.
And so, and I have a grandson who, he is not diagnosed with anxiety, but he is a more anxious kid. And so this is a really important thing. And now that he's getting older, they kind of do this together as an activity. So I always, those calendars, making sure kids know. Also, it helps to keep up, for you to keep up with things too, if you're like me. Make sure that you're spending time talking to your child. Here's some other things that to go over the calendar. So like on the weekend, they actually sit and talk about those events. So it's not just that they do that, but they talk about, here's the things. Oh, you've got your soccer tryouts this week. Those are really important. Giving kids reminders if they have a phone. Some of our older elementary students do. You can set those reminders on there for them, and they can learn to set them on their own. And just want to talk about the importance of bedtime, because this is a big concern. Most children need between 9 and 13 hours of sleep a night. You need to start your bedtime routine several weeks before school starts. So if you're letting kids stay up late right now because they don't have to get up as early or whatever, that's fine. But you want to go ahead and get them used to those bedtime routines and getting that on that schedule ahead of time. And that's an important thing, particularly for our young children. Transitioning sleep is crucial. And we know that a lot of our children, some of our children with ADHD, some of our children with autism, a lot of times they may not sleep well to begin with. So if they're late getting to bed, that's just an added time that they're not getting the rest that they need. And it does impact them at school. There's some great things on the Family Connections website about school and preparing for school that you can, go to the best place. Healthychildren.org is a nice website with just lots of information that you can take a look at. And this is a checklist for the first day of school and getting kids ready for back to school, tips and tricks for a smooth transition. So those are just some resources that are in this PowerPoint if you want to take a look at them. All right. Anything else?
Well, and Susan, thank you so much for sharing so many of those tips. Because, I mean, even though the kids are going back to school and they're going to have to get used to a new routine, we, the parents, also need to get used to that new routine. That things are going to be different whenever summer versus school time. And so, we might need some time to transition as well to that new schedule.
Absolutely.
So really getting kind of everybody reset and starting early with that reset is going to make things more smooth whenever school time rolls around.
Yeah,
So,
and I'll say that too about if you're dropping your child off at school. If you go and say, oh, well, it only takes me 15 minutes, be sure you add more time because once school's going on, it's longer. And so
well,
those
and
kinds of things are
I know
important.
up here, because I'm here in the upstate, the beginning of school, that first, I'd say probably week, it would take us at least, because my children, I would drive them to school. It would take at least double the amount of time to get to school just because of traffic and folks haven't kind of worked out how long things are going to take. And once everybody settles into a rhythm, we're all good. But at first, kind of everybody getting into that rhythm, and it stresses me out if I feel like I'm getting the kids to school late, and then I know they're stressed out too. So it really just is better all around if we all go to bed early, get up on time, get out the door early enough that everybody gets to school on time.
Absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
And remember, if you have concerns or anything, always contact the school first. Let them know. Ask your questions at the school.
Right. Yeah. Well, and so many schools do have different, they have the remind texts that they use. They have Class Dojo, they have Parent Portal. There are a lot of different ways to keep up with the different information. And so, find what information the school has, what kind of mechanisms they use to deliver the information. And then if, for some reason, say you don't have an iPhone or say you don't have access to the internet and you need something different, make sure, again, you communicate that to the teacher, because the teacher may be thinking, hey, I'm putting everything on my website. You should be able to see it. And if you don't have Wi-Fi at home, of course you're not able to see it. So you need to make sure you communicate those things.
Absolutely. And Melissa, that's a great point. I was in a district last week, a school district, and they do not have, they still, where they are, don't have steady internet. And, and so that's important if you're in one of those places, or if you don't have cell phone service, because unless you go out and hold your phone up a certain way, those are important things for the school to know.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you again, Susan Thomas, for giving us all of this great information. And I thank everybody for joining us. I will be sending out the PowerPoint slides tomorrow, as well as a survey that I encourage everybody to complete. The feedback that we receive from those surveys helps us better inform our future trainings, helps us know, ooh, we need to give more of this or less of that. And so we really do appreciate any feedback that you can provide. So, and Jeanette, I see you raising your hand. Do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Hello, everyone. Do you have that information in Spanish also? Could you provide it in Spanish?
Now, we do have some of the tip sheets that were provided are available in Spanish, you'll see. Now, some of the other things, if you like, Jeanette, if you'll just put in the chat your contact information, I can request that Anya Knight, who is our director of bilingual services, reach out to you. And then maybe we can see about some translation or some other information available in Spanish as well. Thank you for that. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I appreciate it so much. And I hope to see everyone at a future training soon. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.